Hello dear viewers, this is Andre Belli, and this is the premiere of my new story on the channel Audiorasskaz. You'll put your shoeboxes where you're the boss. There's no point in cluttering the hallway here. This is my raw materials warehouse. I stumble over these ankle boots of yours as if they were dug in the woods. Tamara Vasilyevna disdainfully picked up Kristina's brand new shoebox with two fingers and hurled it into the dark corner of the hallway, where it slammed into the dusty baseboard with a dull thud. The lid flew off, revealing flawless suede Dушевные. Her mother-in-law pursed her lips in displeasure, resembling two thin, dry noodles, and theatrically shook her hands. Oh, sympathy. Kristina silently picked up her shoes. She didn't want to get into an argument. Life on Tamara Vasilyevna's property for the last 6 months felt like to maintain balance on the road. Every step here was monitored by the all-seeing eye of a woman who considered her tiny Khrushchev-era apartment the center of the universe and herself its eternal emperor. "Mom, what are you starting?" Artyom called weakly from the room. He was reclining on the sagging sofa in the nicety and substance reminiscent of an overripe zucchini forgotten in the garden until the frost. In one hand he held the TV remote, in the other a half-eaten sandwich with bologna. Kristina just came home from work tired. She'll put her shoes away. We'll be moving out soon. That's right, son. You'll be moving out. Tamara Vasilyevna spun around, wafting the scent of Corval and old wool over her daughter-in-law. But when will this soon be? You've been telling me fairy tales for 3 months now, But what's the reality? In reality, everything was crystal clear. Kristina and Audio were saving up for their own places. Or rather, the word saving up was too strong a word when applied to Artyom. His salary as a sales manager at a run-of-the-mill furniture store was disappearing at lightning speed. What was out at speed on gas, lunches at cafeterias, and endless much-needed car. Kristina was the main financial engine, taking overtime reports home and doing the accounting for 3 small firms at night. While Kristina balanced the books until 3 a.m., swigging cheap instant coffee, Artyom could easily a third of his salary on new alloy foil wheels or luxury full-day leather seat covers. This. A man should, if feel confident on the road. This is status, he declared, tucking into a meatloaf in Lobot with her money. This remark about status sounded especially comical, considering that his youth toward spent more time in the shop than on the road. But Kristina endured it, sincerely believing that the family budget was shared and her husband was simply searching for himself. But the real trump card lay in the bank account. Kristina's mother, Nina Petrovna, sold her great-grandmother's house in the suburbs and gave her daughter a substantial sum. The money was enough for a nice 2-room apartment, almost mortgage-free and debt-free. Nina Petrovna, a woman with the agility of a bulldozer and the mind of a chess player, initially opposed the idea of a joint purchase with Artyom. Daughter, I can see right through this man of yours, her mother said over the phone, stirring her tea with a spoon. The sound on the phone sounded like she was sharpening knives. He worked just enough to keep from starving Lamo. And he has the arrogance of a factory director. Get a prenuptial agreement. My money is your property. Christians, after all, they had family. Aru seemed like a decent husband, never Arudi one, and came home on time. And when he learned about the prospect of a prenuptial agreement, he put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. He clutched his heart, rolled his eyes to the ceiling, and spoke with in the D-A-E intonation of insulted by account. Trust is the most important thing in a family. Chris, the money is yours, I don't argue. But the apartment is our family hearth. We require the property. Jointly? How will we live under the same roof if you divide it into yours and mine from day one? It's humiliating for a man. Christina sighed and gave in. She promised herself that she would simply register everything in her name during the marriage, trusting her husband. Nina Petrovna only chuckled but didn't interfere, leaving her daughter to learn her lesson on her own. Then the perfect option was found. A beautiful two-room apartment with tall windows and a spacious loggia. Christina could practically feel herself arranging the furniture there, drinking her morning coffee, not listening to Denko, not Lasalivna shuffling. The deal was set for the following morning. The next morning, the bustle began at dawn. Artyom excused himself from an early inventory check at work, kissed his wife on the cheek, put on his best jacket, and sped off to Ishi. Christina gathered her documents, checked her bank statements, but halfway the meeting with the realtor, she broke out in a cold sweat. She had left behind the original marriage certificate and Artyom's notarized consent to purchase. Without these documents, the notary simply doesn't have a right to register the deed for jointly owned property. Christina turned the car around and headed back to Seteme. She was lucky to avoid traffic, and within 40 minutes she was inserting the key into the lock of her Khrushchev-era apartment. The door opened almost silently. The only good thing about this apartment, Artyom had lubricated the hinges last week. Christina stepped into the hallway intending to quickly slip through to the bedroom, but froze. Voices were coming from the kitchen, and one of them, belonged to Ardu, who was supposedly counting sofas in the warehouse. But that wasn't what caught her attention. Someone else's bright pink coat, reminiscent of a flamingo skin, hung on a coat rack, and on the floor stood a pair of women's boots with an unimaginable stiletto heel. Christina took a step into the kitchen. The door was Tyoma, don't drag it out, said Tamara Vasilievna's voice, creaky as an unoiled television A. This fool will sign everything today. The apartment is great. I saw the photos. It's bright. The ceilings are high. Mom, she'll sign in her name. I told you so. Artyom's voice sounded relaxed and contented, accompanied by smacking sounds. Apparently he was gobbling up his mother's signature pancakes. What was present in it won't go away. It was her shrewish mother who tried to brainwash her with the prenuptial agreement. But I pressed and pressed, singing about trust. It worked like clockwork. That's a smart boy. Dishes clanked in the kitchen. Then came a coy, cloying, feminine laugh, which made Christina's hands itch. And when are you and I moving there, darling? Cooed the owner of the laugh. Her voice oozed Europe, filling my ears with glory. Makai, I've already found some wonderful fall curtains and an ultimate vehicle for the bedroom. Be patient, Elvira. Be patient, my dear. Artem boomed comfortingly. First, let her finish the renovations. We'll squeeze some money out of her mother for the renovations, and then I'm filing for divorce. The apartment is being divided in half according to the law. I demand my share in cash. And with this money, you and I, Aleshka, will get our own place. And rightly so. Tamara Vasilyevna barked at those slapping something with a table. It's ingratitude to live with this one, to have no self-respect. She walks around here, but always turns around with her reports. And you, Elvira, are a kind person. You'll always listen. You'll ask for advice. Hey, look at the manicure she gave me for free yesterday, and she wears masks from a Seven and the Sip salons. Not that she's a dry rooch with a calculator instead of a heart who thinks that because she earns money, she can do anything. Christina stood in the hallway, pressing her shoulder against the wall. There was nothing in her head, no panic, no hysteria, just absolute clarity. It was as if someone had focused a binocular, and the blur had transformed in a sharp, repulsive image. Somewhere deep down, by the rules of the genre, there should have been a sting of pain. After all, she had lived with this man for 4 years, Yakapuz. She had washed his shirts, treated his colds, listened to his endless whining about his unfair boss. But instead of resentment, only a searing wave of contempt rose. They didn't just want to take her money. They planned to throw her out like waste material, having first squeezed her dry buying building materials and doing renovations. What a fool I was, flashed through her mind. But I was a fool exactly until that moment. Her face did not distort with pain. Instead, her eyebrows crept up and her lips formed a crooked, harsh laugh. She silently retreated back to the bedroom, grabbed a folder from the nightstand, then took her phone out of her purse and wrote one short message to her mother. Mom, take your passport and run to the notary at 15 Lenin Street. The deal is urgently being renegotiated. The answer arrived in a second. I'm leaving, daughter. The taxi's already waiting. I told you so. Christina quietly closed the front door behind her, went down the stairs, and got into the car. The air in the car seemed surprisingly fresh after the musty atmosphere of that snake bee hat, which she had mistakenly considered a temporary home. She started the engine, feeling a steady, calm flame of pragmatic place flaring up inside. No tears, no shouting, no showdowns. You need to hit with the ruble, in fact, cruel and inexorable like a sledgehammer on glass. The notary's office smelled of expensive paper and lemon freshener. The seller of the apartment, a fussy man named Igor, constantly adjusted his tie and was nervous. He was afraid of bank transactions, afraid of signatures, afraid of everything. Realtor Oksana, a woman with a concrete grip and a manicure the color of ripe cherries, quickly brought him back to his senses with short clipped sentences. When Nina Penda walked into the office, the temperature into the room seemed to drop a couple of degrees. "Hello, Nina Petrovna." She placed a massive leather bag on the table. "I am the buyer. Everything is in my name. My daughter is here solely as an accompanying person." The seller Igor swallowed nervously and wiped his sweaty forehead with a paper handkerchief. "But wait, we were preparing. The contract was in Kristina Andreevna's name." Nina Petrovna slowly removed her glasses, looked at Igor as if he were a bug that had accidentally landed on the table, and pronounced each word in Shikane's own words, and go furu. "The plan has changed." Oksana, the realtor, was also surprised and raised her eyebrows questioningly, looking at Kristina, who had entered with Nina Petrovna. She simply nodded without batting an eye. "That's right. We're registering it in Mom's name." Notary Valerie, a thin man with thick-rimmed glasses, began typing the information. The process took a little over half an hour. Signatures, seals, and bank transfer confirmations. The purchase and sale agreement went into Mom's folder. "Congratulations on the purchase, Nina Petrovna." Oksana smiled professionally. "Apartments in this area are selling like hotcakes. You've made an excellent investment." Stepping outside, Nina Petrovna took her smartphone out of her purse, adjusted her glasses, and looked at her daughter. "Will there be any details?" the mother asked dryly, although it was clear from her eyes that she already understood everything. "Audie is dating some Elfira, and Tamara Vasilyevna was directing a play in which I was supposed to buy an apartment, renovated with your money, and then Artyom would file for divorce and demand half over the Indra the property." Kristina said this in an even voice, as if she were reading the weather forecast for tomorrow. Nina Petrovna chuckled, adjusting the collar of her coat. "Little scoundrel with Rockefeller heirs, what are you planning to do?" "I'll go to their place now and pick up my things." Kristina glanced at her watch. "And on the way, I'll stop by the Legislative Assembly and file for divorce. I don't intend to deal with this circus for a second. Morgal, if anything happens, call them. I'll talk to them, but Nina Petrovna pointedly patted her bag where the brand new contract lay and headed for the taxi stop or Aristaki stop. Kristina got into the car. There was no sadness about her broken marriage inside her. Only disgust, like someone accidentally squashing a cockroach, and a wild desire to quickly wash away this sticky layer of someone else's cunning, which they had so ineptly tried to impose on her. The door to the Khrushchev-era apartment opened just as soundlessly. Kristina entered the hallway. The pink flamingo coat continued to adorn the coat rack, and directly beneath it now sat two hastily collected trash backers containing Kristin's things. She walked straight into the living room. The stin that gritoro wasn't like something out of Asian Pador regional television soap opera. Artyom sat on the sagging sofa and Elva, who had just appeared, nestled comfortably next to her or near to her. The girl, her lips swollen to the size of two inflatable boats, was twirling a sparse strand of Artyom's hair around her finger. Tamara Vasilyevna sat in the chair opposite, her hands folded serenely across her stomach, watching this pastoral scene with affection. This scene was so absurd that Christina paused for a second in the doorway, examining the entire room, Trinity, like curious in su leitin pairikari. Tamara Vasilyevna was the first to notice her. Her mother-in-law didn't flinch or show any surprise. On the contrary, her face broke into a predatory, anticipatory smile. "Here comes our landlady," she announced loudly, rising from her chair. Here, Sika. "The deal's done. The papers have been signed." "Excellent. Now, grab your bags from the hallway and get out of We've decided not to wait for your renovations." Artyom didn't even try to distance himself from Elvira. He leaned back comfortably on the sofa, veining ma suroi. "Yes, Christina, surprise," he announced with a grin. "The masks have been dropped. I found a real woman and you fulfilled your purpose. The apartment was Butch's during our marriage, so half is mine. Make room for Eli, mi perkumai." Elvira lifted her chin proudly, revealing a profile unmarred by intellect, and it tried to look down on Christina without getting up from the couch. At that moment, she resembled an angry little kid. "Did you hear me?" Tamara Vasilyevna stamped her foot, to creak pitifully. "Get lost in your concrete box, and remember, half now belongs to my Artyom. The law stipulates that we share in the marriage. We've already found a lawyer." Christina calmly walked into the room, threw her bag on the coffee table, and crossed her arms over her chest. Not a trace of embarrassment, not a hint of hysteria. She towered over this comic cultural monolith of calm. She listened to this angry tirade with an expression as if she were worth being told a funny joke. When her mother-in-law's fountain of eloquence dried up and Artyom fell silent playing the menacing male, Christina slowly unzipped her bag. She pulled out a thick blue folder. "Nano, fast. Tyoma," Christina drawled in a perfectly crystal clear voice, tinged with an undisguised mockery. "You said yourself that it doesn't matter who the apartment is registered to. What matters most is trust, really, in the family hearth." Artyom blinked. A shadow of doubt flickered in his cloudy eyes. Tamara Vasilyevna craned her neck warily. "So I decided to register it in my mother's name," Christina finished, throwing a copy of the purchase and sale agreement down on the table in front of her mother-in-law with a loud slam. Confidently, with relish, like throwing an ace of trumps on the table. Tamara Vasilyevna, like a hypnotized snake, reached for the paper again. Her gnarled fingers were shaking. She grabbed the sheets of paper, brought them close to her face, and began to greedily slide her gaze along the lines. With each letter she read, her face changed shades. First it turned the color of wrought dough, then green, and by the end of the page, it had become crimson, like a overripe tomato. The buyer is Nina Petrovna, the mother-in-law croaked, not believing her eyes. Her voice suddenly sank, turning into a pitiful rustling. She convulsively gulped air through her mouth, resembling a carp washed up on the shore. How? How on her? Money is in marriage. It's Mom's money too, Tamara Vasilyevna. Christina smiled, widely enjoying the effect she had produced. So there's nothing to divide or nag about. Yehora Tayom is exactly 0. Artyom snatched the papers from his mother's hands, nearly tearing them in half. He stared at the notary's blue seal as if it might explode. You couldn't do that, he bellowed, in a thin, almost feminine voice, breaking into hysterics. You deceived me. I'll file a lawsuit for this fraud, I'll prove it. Prove what, smart guy? Christina chuckled mockingly, taking another sheet of paper out of the same folder. That you worked, but for pennies, while Mom and I were saving up for an apartment. Good luck in court. You'll pay the fee out of your salary if it's enough. By the way, here's another gift. She tossed a neat form, stamped with the blue seal of the Zachs, over a sales contract. The divorce petition has been filed because we have no children or joint property, and what a surprise. They'll get it done quickly. I went there straight after the notary, wait for the notice. Tamara Vasilyevna looked at the form as if it were a court order. She finally grasped the full scale of the disaster. The apartment was gone. The money was gone. The free housekeeper and sponsor were gone. And all that was left was a useless, overgrown idiot sitting on the couch alone with a glamorous leech who doesn't know which side of the stove to use. Elvira, who realized the meaning of what was happening a few minutes late, wrinkled her nose in displeasure. Tem, what about the apartment? She whined. You promised we'd move. I've already ordered an ottoman. Where should I put it? Here. It already stinks of grandma's rags. Shut up, Elia, Aryam barked, throwing the papers on the table. He jumped up, shaking his fist in the How bold of you. You decided to leave me with nothing. Yes, you. Yes, I. You were left with what Dioma came to me with. Christina cut off his rambling speech with an icy tone. With empty pockets, her mother's pious and boundless trust in the world. She didn't waste on the circus. She turned on her heels, walked into the hallway. Back to Chicken. She took her suitcase out of the closet and put the rest in there. She grabbed her suitcase by the handles and 2 trash bags containing her belongings, collected by her thoughtful mother-in-law, and headed for the exit. As she rested, Christina heard the harshest curses from the hall. Tamara Vasilievna had already switched from her daughter-in-law to her son, nagging him for his stupidity and big mouth. Artyom snapped back. Elvira demanded her ottoman in compensation for emotional distress. The family home was falling apart at the seams, falling apart with an incredible crash. The keys are on the dresser. Quote, opening the front door. I wish you happiness in your personal life. Elvira, put the ottoman by the window. There's less draft there. She stepped out into the stairwell and slammed the door behind her. The lock clicked loudly, cutting her off from the screams, complaints, and lies of fathers. Outside breathing was easy and free. The spring wind tangled her hair, and in her bag lay the contract for a new, bright apartment, where Tache and his enterprising mother would never set foot. Christina smiled, walked to her car, threw her things in the back seat, and started the engine, setting off for her new, completely unencumbered life. Turning the wheel, she pulled out of the yard, leaving the panel box and all its inhabitants behind. Justice had prevailed, and the bank account remained in perfect order alliance. Thank you all for listening. This was Andre Belli. See you in new videos.